Hi, I'm Neve O'Connor, and I'm here with Haley Hewitt, who's a Boston-based harpist. So let's just start with the fact that that's not your only title, right? So let's talk about how you started with the harp. It's kind of a rare instrument. What drew you to that instrument?
Okay, well, when I was about 8 years old, I had been taking piano since I was really little, so I was, somewhat capable for an 8-year-old. And I had never seen a harp before, but we went to this little shop in Brattleboro, Vermont called the Maple Leaf Music Store, I think it was called. And in the back of the store, they had a harp. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. It was beautiful. It was statuesque and curvy and blonde and just gorgeous. And I was really drawn to the look of the thing. And so I went right up to it and started plunking away at it, not having a clue what I was supposed to do. And fortunately, it was in tune. So I was able to figure out that it's set up pretty much just like the white keys of a piano. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I started playing my piano pieces on it. And my parents came over and they were like, okay, we're gonna get this for her. And so we went home with it that day. Yeah, and it's that harp right there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how I started.
It gave me chills.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I later found out that my mother had always wanted to play. And so when she saw that I was interested, she was like, yep, this is worth the investment if Haley really wants to do it. And so at first, for the first few years, I was kind of iffy about learning. I had other things going on. I was doing other activities. But then when I was about 12, I really got the bug and just fell in love with the instrument. And I had some fluidity on it, and I was able to just play what I wanted instead of working out so much how to do it. So that really helped, and it just became something I love to do. So I'm still doing it.
That's amazing. So, right, you're a harpist, and then also you arrange and compose, and you also educate. Crazy talented, obviously.
Well,
but
thanks.
Immediately I was like, okay, I only minimally know composing or arranging. Can you maybe for our viewers explain the difference between those two?
Sure. Composing basically means you start with a blank sheet of paper, or it's all yours. Everything in the composition is from within you. An arrangement is usually a setting of something that is already composed, not necessarily by you. So like a folk tune, you find it and you want to add something to it or manipulate it somehow. That would be arranging. So if, for example, I run a harp group, if I have a tune that I want the harp group to play, it's pretty unlikely that I'll find an arrangement for harp group of this tune. So I end up taking the tune and manipulating it and adding to it and bringing out what I can from it, and that would be arranging. So it's really fun. It's a great stepping stone to composing because it uses a lot of the skills that you have to develop to compose. You have to come up with your own ideas. You have to make decisions about what notes to play. But you're not completely starting from a very scary blank sheet of paper. So arranging is really great if you want to get started with composing.
Wow. So you had to learn the language of music. And you kind of talked about that before with your background in piano and being able to like put those keys on the harp and like just even at first glance, that's amazing. And so you also educate around Quincy now, which is really cool. And we were talking about this before. So what age range do you get usually? You know?
I don't like to start much earlier than 7 or 8, unless it's a pretty physically built child, because they tend to not be able to handle the weight of the thing and also the strength and dexterity that you need for your fingers. So I usually, if a very young student wants to learn harp, I tell the parents, start them on piano because it doesn't take as much to handle for a child, and they're still building the skills they'll need to learn the harp because it's very transferable, and in some ways it's easier to learn because it's easier to push a button on a piano than to figure out how to move your hands correctly with the harp. So 8 or 7, all the way up to however old you want. I think my oldest is in her 80s, and she's amazing. She's still got all her faculties, and she loves it. And she just started a couple years ago, so she's great. I have so much admiration for her.
That is so cool.
And so it's a whole range of ages. I have like a cluster of little kids, a cluster of teenagers, a cluster of middle-aged people who now have time and their kids are out and they now have money and they're like, I've always wanted to do this, so now I'm going to do it. And they're awesome. And then I have a couple of much older people.
Yeah.
So really the harp is, it's not so hard to get started on. It's a very friendly instrument. It sounds great right away. The hard part is getting really good at it. That takes a lot of practice. But getting it to sound good and so that you can be satisfied with the sound you're making, that can happen in just a couple of weeks, which is great. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, like I almost associate it with kind of like folklore and like magic and that kind of feel, because it's just such a majestic instrument.
Yeah.
And so you're also obviously a performer on top of all this. And what questions come to my mind are, how do you perform with the harp? Like, is it something that you sit down with? Or are you standing?
Oh, you mean physically?
Yeah.
Well, this kind of harp, the one that I'm going to be playing today, is called a floor standing harp. So it just sits on the floor and I lean it towards myself and I use my hands and arms and play it.
Awesome.
There are smaller harps that can sit in your lap. They're like about that big and they're too small to sit on the floor. You have to raise them up so that you can reach them. And then there are the much larger instruments called pedal harps. Those you kind of play similarly, like you sit it on the floor and you lean it back against you. But you end up using your feet for the pedals at the floor.
Oh, wow.
And it's just a much more substantial instrument. So it requires a kind of more good posture, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
So those are the three main kinds of harps that you'd have to like adjust for if you're going to perform on them.
Wow, that's so cool. It's just something that I never knew about.
Yeah.
But so you are going to perform for us today. Do you want to talk a little bit about what pieces you're going to?
Yeah, so I thought I'd give a sampling of what I'm planning to play for the concert at the library. So it being March, I was thinking of putting together some Irish music. In harp tradition, we are very lucky to have some amazing composers. And the most famous of them is an Irishman. His name was Turlough O'Carolan, and even non-harpers know who he is. He is that famous, which is rare. Usually there's famous and there's harp famous. He's actually famous, so we're pretty lucky to have him. So he wrote tons of music for the harp. He was an itinerant harper, and he was blind. So he would go from house to house to house, composing music and performing for people, usually writing music for whoever's house he was in at the time. So he has lots of documented music, and it was very popular at the time. He was like the equivalent of a rock star at the time. One fact I found out that shows kind of how popular he was a few decades later, after he had died, there was the Belfast Harp Festival, and I think of all 12 harpers that came together to play, I think 10 played tunes written by him, but had never met him before. That's how influential he was. Wow. His music just took Ireland by storm. So I'll be playing some of his stuff, and I'll also be playing some of my own material because I just like to. It feels close to home, and it's something that I can offer and nobody else can. So the O'Carolan tune I will be playing is called Clergy's Lamentation. I just recently learned it. One of my students came to a lesson and said, I want to learn this one, and I didn't know it. And so I said, okay, let's both learn it. And so I set a challenge. I would arrange it and she would arrange it, and so you'll hear my arrangement. And then I'll be playing a couple of my own tunes. The first one is a waltz that I wrote called Air and Sunshine. And the second is a slow reel that I call Green Tunnels.
Oh, I cannot wait. So thank you so much for sharing about your history, and thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, absolutely. It's been really fun.
Great, I know, likewise. And so if you want to see Haley at the Thomas Crane Public Library, she'll be performing March 11th at 3 p.m. And we're so lucky to have her here. And look out for her in Quincy, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you so much, and thank you, Haley.
Thank you.